Good morning. Wow, so great to see all of you here today. Look at a bunch of campers, huh? How many of you, just by show of hands, have been to church camp? Went to church camp at some point in your life? Yeah, so that's amazing. That's amazing. So we have Camp Sunday today, and part of doing the Camp Sunday is to just share with you a little kind of laid-back service and some fun stuff. But also, it's one of the ministries that we support. Your tithes and offerings. We give away right now to benevolent giving probably about 16% of what is our operational costs. So we give a significant amount of money away to other organizations who help people who do camp ministry. Well, we support Word Camp Ministry, but Fellowship Cup, Tulsa Community Action with their food pantry, they're helping things. Family Connection that helps families who need a little assistance and education. And your tithes and offerings support a lot of those things. So we kind of wanted to celebrate that today with our support of Camp Wyoming. And we're gonna give them their check here. We're gonna send it out in the mail. And so we divide up whenever we give to these organizations. We do it so we're not just paying out $16,000 at one bit. We kind of spread them out over the course of the year. So this month is Camp Wyoming. And Sarah, you want to raise your hand? That's Sarah right there. She is on the Camp Wyoming board. And so they asked, they asked both of us. And then, so we asked the director, who did you ask first? And he said Sarah. So she's on the Camp Wyoming board. And she also did all these little decorations to make the little campfires. Do not light those. Do not light those. We have lunch after church, folks. There are plenty of sandwiches and sides for everybody. Don't run away. Don't run away. Stay and eat. And here's why. Part of the reason that we're worshiping in the fellowship hall today and sitting at round tables is because we're going to start a process in the church that I have called growing or nurturing our roots and growing new fruits. And so if you think of a tree, you've got to nurture the roots, but you also want to grow new fruit. You are the roots. You here are the roots. And this is part of nurturing our roots. So we're going to do some sharing at some point while we're sitting at the tables so that you know a little bit more about each other. It's not going to be uncomfortable sharing. You'll see it laid out in the liturgy. But worshiping this way and then breaking bread together after a sermon on gluttony helps us develop relationships. It helps us nurture our roots. It helps us to know each other better. And so whenever we think about growing new fruits, we feel like we've got people that we can lean on, that we've got some excitement about what's happening here, and that we've got some friends to go and do these wild, crazy things. So this is part of that. And over the next year, we're going to have some conversations with a visioning group where we talk about listening to you. What are your core beliefs? What are your core values? What are your core practices? Who are we as a body of Christ? Who are we as individuals? And who are we as a big body of Christ? And then from that, we're going to start developing some practices out of your core values and your core beliefs and the things that you want to put into practice in Christian faith. So we're going to have some other conversations in here around those types of things. around core values, core beliefs, core practices. But a big part of that is to nurture each other and to listen to each other and say, what do you value in life? What do you value about your faith? And then from that, we're going to develop a vision for who we are as a congregation, as a particular body, in a particular place in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and how are we to be used by God for doing that. So it's kind of a twofold process, nurturing us and then figuring out what is God's vision based on who we are, right? So I pray that you will enjoy this time together. We're going to do a couple of different things today too with some music. It should be really, really fun. I'm excited about it. So thanks for all you guys who have dedicated a little extra time to make that happen. Hey, Becky. We've got a couple other announcements today. Please fill out the friendship pad that's sitting on your table so you can record to it so you can call each other by name.
So this Friday is the Windmill Dinner Theater. This is happening at the Veterans Hall, and we're really hoping that this can be like a Pathfinders and Exennial Generation Xer / Millennial event. And so it's a supper from a buffet dinner from 6 to 7, and then at 7:30 there will be a dinner show. And so I'll be selling tickets this morning for this event. Kids are free, kids are invited, and if you don't want to purchase them today, they'll be at Brown's Shoe Store until Thursday, and that's the last day that you can purchase those. And so it's this Friday for St. Patrick's Day. It should be a fun event. Are either of the Lawlers here this morning? So I also want to announce the Lawler Easter egg hunt. This is happening on Saturday, March 24th at 10 a.m. Everyone is invited. There will be around 5,100 Easter eggs on their 3.5 acres. I think the Press On kids this Wednesday are helping fill those Easter eggs, so it should be a lot of fun, and the rain date is March 31st. But they love to do this. It's one of their favorite things, and so I hope that any of you with kids or without kids or with grandkids will go and have fun at the Easter egg hunt. And then Sunday, Palm Sunday, March 25th, we are doing our own kind of family Easter fun at the church. This will be after worship on Palm Sunday. We'll be decorating Easter eggs and having a few other things for the kids to enjoy. And so grandparents and parents and kids are all invited for that. And then my last announcement is that tonight is our third session of the Game Day in God class, and we've been having a lot of fun and good conversations, and so everyone is invited at 5:30 tonight.
Thanks. Hey, is anybody hot?
Yes.
Yeah. Patty, would you turn the thermostat down over there? Just stick your finger in there and press down a couple times, so we'll stop the heat from running. Yeah, go get you. We're not going to shock her again. No, just bump it down 2 or 3 so the heat keeps running, just below whatever it's on. Nah. You guys want the ceiling fans on? Isn't it fun to be church family? That's always a battle in my house. Martha, you have an announcement?
Yes.
Coming up this summer, June 11th through the 15th, is when we're going to have Vacation Bible School out at Camp Freeman, which isn't Camp Wyoming, but it's a church camp. And this is the 5th year we've done it. Every year we try and make it better. In the past, we've always encouraged families to send life preservers for their children. She says, and they make with that. I would like to have them have the Coast Guard approved life jackets that really snug those kids in there. If you've been out there and seen that pond, it's a huge pond. It's a glorious pond. They can boat on it. They can swim in it. They can go out to the raft and jump off of it. But after a kid's been zipped in and clipped in, we feel a lot better. And Bonnie went to Dick's Sporting Goods, smiled at the man, and said, "What kind of deal can you cut us for 30 life jackets. There's little kid, medium-sized kid, and big kid, all blue, so they're all alike. The buy one, get one half off. These aren't cheap. At that price for $30, if we have $2,000, we can have a stash of these that we can put on kids. So, if you would like to contribute to that, just, make out the check and make it designated to life jackets for Vacation Bible School. Full price, these are running $80, $90, or $100. And we got a deal. So, if you'd like to help, please take advantage of this opportunity.
Thank you, Martha. Don't let that opportunity sail by. Last announcement, I'd like to call your attention to the, look at that. Tom Boston Kimple texted me this morning, and they had their grandbaby. So, yeah, Tom's a granddaddy 3 times over now. So fast. So thanks for throwing that up. I'm looking at Leo because he put that slide up there. Thanks, Leo, for putting that up so quick this morning. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, the other announcement I was going to make was that camp scholarships, if you have someone who is a senior or going off to school, or someone who is starting their higher education for the first time, you can fill out a scholarship form, and part of our ministry for your tithes and offerings go to support people when they go to school. So we do a $500 scholarship generally, depending on how many people we have going. And so those forms are due in April. So you can note that in your bulletin. Are there any other announcements today? Let us center our hearts and minds to worship God.
A lot of you will know this song. It's Sanctuary. It's one of the songs that I've been singing on mission trips and camp retreats since I was in elementary school. And so we wanted to share today a prayer of illumination. And you can sing along with us.
So, I like cheesecake. I love cheesecake. I went to the store and I bought some cheesecake. And I said to myself, while I'm buying this cheesecake, I shouldn't be buying this cheesecake. And I looked at this cheesecake as I rode around all through the store saying, I'm going to eat you, cheesecake. I shouldn't eat you, cheesecake. And I go up and I said, well, maybe I'll just walk back by, do another pass, and I'll put it back. But I didn't put it back because I was like, I want this cheesecake. And I go through the checkout line, and I'm sitting there and I'll go, you know what, I'm just going to leave the cheesecake at the checker. No, it's not her job to go put it back. It's too late. I'm taking the cheesecake home. So it's like 11 o'clock at night. I've already had one piece of cheesecake with dinner. And Sarah and Hudson are in bed. And I'm opening up the cheesecake, and I'm saying, just one more. And you know that feeling where you kind of, like your lips just, you're like, and your nostrils flare, and your lips kind of just curl up in resignation. You're like, oh, and it's so good. And then you're like, oh, wow. Hey, you've done that, right? 11 o'clock at night, you've eaten that piece of cheesecake or a brownie, right? But what if I told you then I had another piece? You might judge me. But then I had some for breakfast. Pastor has a problem. Pastor has a problem. There's this comedian named Jim Gaffigan, and he does this great bit about food, and he talks about cake, and he says, if I ate birthday cake for breakfast, you would absolutely judge me. But if I took cake batter, fried it in a pan with butter, or went to a buffet where they had fried it all in the butter for me, and I ate like 1 million pancakes at a buffet, you could say, well, he's getting his money worth. It's good for him. Good for him. So, what is gluttony? Wait, when we think about talking about the 7 deadly sins, what is gluttony? Here's one quote that I found. It said, a glutton is the person who takes the last donut. Frederick Buechner, a Presbyterian minister, theologian, and author, says that a glutton is one who runs to the refrigerator for a cure to a spiritual malnutrition. Gluttony, in whatever form it takes, and gluttony can take a lot of forms. It does not have to be food. Let me say that again. Gluttony does not have to just be about food. Gluttony, in whatever form it takes, spoils one's appetite for God. Gluttony attempts to fill the perpetual emptiness that we all have at times in our lives. One Bible dictionary defines a glutton as one habitually given to greedy and voracious eating. And to be voracious means to be exceedingly eager. In the New Testament, the word was used to describe a rascal or scoundrel who had an uncontrolled or an excessive desire to consume. One author suggests that gluttony, as talked about by our wisdom traditions, by our desert fathers and the ones who lived out and practiced living against the 7 deadly sins, they said that gluttony may have been what they were using to explain what we call addictions. Addictions. A glutton is a person given to loose and excessive living, and food is just part of the excess. Gluttony could be from shopping, from credit cards, or alcohol. There could be gluttony with video games. Did you hear about the one with the mom who said to her son, honey, did you get into college for the fall? No, Mom, I didn't get my applications in. Why didn't you turn in your applications? Was it the video games? No, I don't know. Maybe. Right? The thing with gluttony and how it's different from some of the other 7 deadly sins is gluttony destroys the life of the one who practices it. This is how one person described it. It is like a parasitic virus. Gluttony destroys the host. But like the 6 other deadly sins, gluttony resides in all of us. It is as much part of our nature as anger, envy, pride, or the disinterested sloth. Yet we are so quick to judge people as gluttons. There are the stereotypes of the glutton as being lazy or overweight or whatever fate befalls them. Well, they deserve it. They did it to themselves, right? And of course, the truth is, we judge other people most harshly for the things we hate inside of ourselves. Because we all know there is something inside of us for which we are out of control. And when we see somebody else who appears to be gluttonous, we judge them harshly. They should have more control. But what we're really saying is, I judge myself even harder than that. I should have more control, but I get to shame them because it makes me feel better. Right? Here's a case in point. Paula Deen. Do you remember Paula Deen? The butter queen? Paula Deen, the famous chef, used to just cook these southern fried recipes. And she would take like green beans with fat back off of pigs and then roast them in butter and wrap them in bacon. And then she on the side would batter these things in bread, these chicken breasts, and stuff them with cheese and all this other stuff, and then cut it up and serve it. And then she came out and said, I have diabetes. And everyone said, but they didn't just say, they were mean to her. They said, good, you got your just desserts. And then they started slamming her, saying, you have given other people diabetes, that you are promoting this lifestyle that is absolutely terrible. And the internet world went nuts on her. People attacked her. She lost advertisers. She lost her television shows. Others said that she was destroying lives. She was sued and defamed, and her products were pulled from shelves. She was scapegoated for America's love of food. Right? She was our gluttonous sacrifice for ourselves. See what she did to me? She made me do it. Paula Deen made me eat those fried Twinkies at the state fair. But really, come on. What other nation in the world has a hot dog eating contest to celebrate their independence? Right? And think of all the pie eating that happens on the 4th of July. Mind you, the Bible says that food is to be enjoyed. One of the favorite psalms of everybody, the 23rd Psalm, praises food. It says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And again, the psalmist says, the eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season. When angels come down to visit Abraham and Sarah, they cook a big feast. The creation story concludes on the 6th day with God saying, I have given you all of the good fruits of the earth. Take and eat. And when you think about it, consider that food, too, is one of our big celebrations in the life of a church. All of Israel's holy feasts were celebrated with food, except for one. And then the most significant occasions in Jesus' life, he was often breaking bread with other people. He was at people's dinner tables. And then, of course, the primary meal that we have in the church, the Lord's Supper, the sacrament, a holy meal, a holy meal. So, when we talk about gluttony, and when we talk about food, I can almost hear someone saying at some point, well, you know, what we do with our health and how I live, that's my own business. That's my own. But what we're finding more and more is that it's not true. That it's not true. In a world of insurance and rising medical costs, John Donne's beautiful line, every man's death diminishes me, has a different ring. Any person's illness is likely to cost money to all of us. Those living under the same insurer or belonging to the same employer's pool cost others money. But that's to say nothing about what a person's untimely death means to those who love that person. But again, it doesn't just have to be food. We can destroy our lives with anything. Too much work, too much play, too much of anything as an escape can destroy us. Paul believed that our bodies, but not just our bodies, but our whole lives were temples dedicated to God where the Holy Spirit would reside. And he says how we treat them is not just a personal matter, but it's part of our relationship with God and with one another. If we take this teaching seriously, and we should, we will see our bodies as something more than just a thing to be fed or insured or a unit to just be used up. Our whole life, our whole body is sacred, and it's supposed to be used to the glory of God. What we do with our lives matters. And yet we fail over and over and over again. We fail to treat our bodies as temples. We fail to be aware of the Holy Spirit in our lives and everything that we do. Personal example. I went for my annual checkup in December. And I said to the doctor, "Doctor, I've not been losing weight." And she said, "Oh, you've been dieting and exercising." No. I exercise, but diet? Come on. And I know what I'm supposed to do, but like Paul says, I do the things that I know I ought not to do. And I feel bad about it all the time, but I just can't bring myself to do what I know I'm supposed to do. And when we think about the life of Jesus, like we know that Jesus was called a glutton and a drunkard. And when you think about Jesus, he's the guy that was at the wedding party at Cana, right? You know what they say, the water into wine. The Jewish mother said, "Jesus, they're out of wine." He says, "What business is that to me?" And then next thing you know, he's making wine, like no other words were said. A Jewish mother got her son to move quick, right? Just a little, all the time. And off he goes and he makes all this wine. Like we know he's the type of guy that kind of, as they like to say, kept the party going. But then we also know that he was the type of guy who fasted, right? We never saw Jesus actually acting as a glutton or a drunkard. We know he enjoyed a lot of meals, but there's nothing in the Bible that says he was in no way not moderate, right? There's nothing that says that. But we do know that he was very rigid about some of his fasting practices. So very temperate with some of those things. And so what we can take from Jesus, and what we can take about gluttony, is to be like Jesus. To do things in moderation, right? But here's the bad news. You are not Jesus. You are not Jesus. How many of you have tried to stop one of your bad habits and have succeeded? Completely, 100% succeeded. Okay, so for those 4 that raised their hands, how many of you did it on your own? Right? You can't. And that's the secret with gluttony. The way to overcome gluttony is through self-control. But there's a trick with self-control. And that trick with self-control is knowing that you absolutely have no self-control whatsoever. We all lack discipline. And once you admit that you don't have the self-control to do what you need to do, you find yourself turning these things over to God. And then you find yourself turning over your needs to other people. And then what you find is that you can lean on someone else to help lift you out of that place that you need help being lifted out of. Does that make sense? So we admit that we cannot do it on our own. That we are powerless over these things that control us. And we admit that we need God's help. And here's the thing I love, is that I've written in the liturgy, is that our son? We need help sometimes. I've written in the liturgy about how we are called together as a people of God. And how part of our call, I'm going backwards here, I just want to find this one quote, and how part of our job together is to lean on each other, right? Because we can't do it alone. There's this gentle nudge, I believe, from the Spirit of God that calls us together into community to sit with each other and to share joys and concerns. We're called together. And part of my belief is that the Spirit knows our needs before we ask. And that could be a coincidence. But when we allow ourselves to be open and connected through the Spirit, when we admit that we need other people to affect a change in the world, to affect a change in our own lives, we find that things start happening that people like to call coincidence. Quick story about being called together as a community. I was working one time during the Christmas season, and someone walked into my office and they said, "Trey, I think somebody's going to need this," and they handed me a $100 bill. And a few hours later, I was talking with a friend, and this friend was saying, "Yeah, no, so I just don't think we're going to do much for Christmas." And we were just sharing. And I said, yeah, I knew his wife wasn't working, right? And his job, he wasn't getting hit the hours that he wanted. And I said, "You know what? Someone just walked into my office and said, I think someone's going to need this. Here, take it and go buy your kids some extra stocking stuffers," right? He's like, "No, that's not what it's here for." I was like, "Yes, it is." Yeah, and that's just a silly way. People call it coincidence, but that's providence. That's what happens when we empty ourselves and live for others, right? We find ourselves leaning on each other. And that's so important. So I think it's important to understand what we're doing whenever we're trying to fill this need with stuff, whenever we're consuming alcohol, the opioid crisis, right? When you think about that, that's gluttony in a way. When we think about that 60% of Americans are considered overweight or obese, and that Pepsi alone spent $16.2 million on 3 commercials for the Super Bowl for Pepsi, and Doritos, right? When we think about it, we have this problem. So what in the world are we trying to fill with all this? And I think what we're trying to fill is that innate connection that we all have to each other that gets broken at some point. So when you think about a kid, a toddler, who is crying, right, because they have separation anxiety, that is us realizing that we're not actually as connected as we think we are. And I think over a lifetime, we keep trying to reconnect in a way that is impossible to do. And so we start filling ourselves up with something else to try to either, one, suppress the fact that we're not truly as connected as we want, or two, create that connection, which doesn't work. And you can do that with a relationship too. How many of you got married thinking like, "Oh, you complete me," right? And then you found 20 years later, you completely drive me nuts. we were trying to fill this void that is natural in all of us. And the truth is, have the ability to fill that void, we find that we can accept that brokenness and we can fill it up with something else. And we can learn to live and lean on each other. So I'm going to close with asking for you to use your gifts, your tithes and offerings to help us lean on other people. The things you do here, the things you share, the things that happen around these tables, and your gifts, they shape lives so that we are changed inside of our Christian community. And so we're gonna sing a song, and they're gonna pass the offering plates, and then after that, we're gonna hear from some of our kids. about how you have helped shape their lives. So, will the offering please be taken?
Beecham and Erica Redgate and Becky Seiberts all came on Friday and helped prepare the table centerpieces. And if you'd like to take one home with you, you can. So I grew up going to the Presbyterian camp on Lake Okoboji, which is way up in the northwest corner of the state. But that for me was definitely a place of faith formation. And so we are blessed to have Camp Wyoming in our Presbyterian. I think today is just a great way to celebrate camp ministry and all that it does for our children and for our faith formation. And as Trey mentioned earlier, we are giving a $500 check to Camp Wyoming, and that's Kevin. He's the executive director of the camp, and that's him saying thanks. And I also want to invite up 3 of our youth who have camped at Camp Wyoming, and they're going to share what camp has meant to them. So Anya and Grant and Lauren, please come up.
You got a little bit close to your mouth.
favorite thing that I like to do at camp, and it's not the archery or the swimming or the caving. All of them are pretty cool. My favorite thing to do is go to Bible study and the worship. So the counselors make sure that you still get a time for God as part of all the fun things at camp. In the middle of every day, we have this thing called Bible study, where the counselors take you to like just different fun places. Sometimes they take you hiking, and you can just sit and read about what Jesus did. You learn some pretty amazing things, and then you do some activities about what you just learned. At the end of the day, all the different groups meet up for worship. At worship, you sing and dance and watch small skits put on by the counselors about what you're going to learn that day. You pray, and then all the groups split up to go to bed for the night. At the end of every week, some of the counselors dress up as an important person from the Bible and go to a specific spot on the hiking trail. All the groups go and hike a few minutes apart from each other. Each counselor tells a story of their person and what they thought of Jesus. Some of the counselors have you do small activities, like just picking up a few rocks or sitting down and praying. There are candles lit on the side of the hiking trail so that you can see where you're going as you're doing this at night. These are my favorite activities because while you're doing all of this fun stuff, you still get a time to sit down and just learn about what Jesus did and what God has to tell us.
It was a really fun camp, and I just want to thank the church for sending us to the camp. It was really fun. Probably one of my favorite things to do there was maybe 9 Square or hiking, and Horse Thief Cave was pretty cool too. It's just a big cave that was actually caved in because there was some horse stealers, and they got the police over there. So, and the police stopped them, and then there's a whole shoot-off and everything. And then you can see the person, one of the guy's hands, just coming out of yeah. And arts and crafts was pretty fun, like, because we made the God's Eye and all of that stuff. And then the creek stomping was fun because you could just get dirty and stomp around everywhere. Well, yeah.
I had a pretty good experience at Camp Wyoming too, because and thanks for letting us go there. One of my favorite parts was creek stomping because I got stuck a lot in the mud from the slide in the mud, and the slide at the pool was really fun because you got to like slide down it and there's a curve, and then it felt like you were flying through the air, and then you went into the water. And then at the end of camp, we got like a book, and in crafts we made like a God's Eye, and it was just pretty fun.
So one of the things that we do in addition to for over 175 years